Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Maryland Public Service Commission's administrative meeting for June the 6th, 2018. I'd like to start with a few announcements. I'm pleased to first announce that Mr. Judge Chuck McLean, who is in the very back of our room today, we are happy to announce that Judge McLean has become our new Chief Public Utility Law Judge. Judge McLean joined the Public Service Commission in December of 2008 and was promoted to Deputy Staff Counsel in January of 2012, and then to the Law Judge Division in May of 2014. Judge McLean was Assistant County Attorney with Carroll County for approximately 4 years, focusing on zoning and land use policies. He also served on active duty in the U.S. Air Force as Judge Advocate for approximately 4.5 years. So, Chief Judge McLean, welcome. We look forward to working with you. Also, would like to announce that our new Executive Secretary is with us today not for her first administrative meeting, but her first time back as Executive Secretary, Terry Romine. Terry Romine was formerly the Chief Judge of the Public Utility Law Division. Judge Romine was also joined the Public Service Commission in 2007, and we are very proud that Judge Romine also served on active duty in the United States Navy Judge Advocate General Corps Division. So, Madam Executive Secretary, we welcome you back and look forward to working with you. And just to also announce that Dave Collins, our former Executive Secretary, will still be with us as Deputy Executive Secretary, so we look forward to continuing to work with him in his new role as well. So with that, let's turn to our draft minutes from the administrative meeting for May the 3rd. I'll ask someone to move to approve the minutes.
I move we adopt the minutes from last week's administrative meeting.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The minutes are approved. On to our administrative agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is no consent agenda. The administrative agenda, item 1, is McLeod USA Telecommunications Services, LLC, filed on May 15, 2018, request to withdraw its certification to provide local exchange telecommunication services in Maryland.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Janice Flynn for item number 1. McLeod USA Telecommunications LLC requests that the Commission withdraw its certification to provide local exchange service in Maryland. The company has certified that it has no customers in Maryland and that no end users will be affected by its withdrawal from this market, and that it has filed all required reports. In addition, staff has verified that the company is current with its PSC assessments. Staff recommends that the Commission rescind McLeod USA Telecommunications LLC authority in Maryland and cancel its tariffs.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? If not, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move we rescind the company's local exchange operating authority and cancel its tariffs.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item number 2 is Marathon Power, LLC, filed on March 16, 2018, an application for a license to supply electricity or electric generation services in Maryland, as well as item 3, which is Marathon Power, LLC, filed on March 19, 2018, an application for a license to supply natural gas or natural gas supply services in Maryland.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Kenneth Albert on behalf of staff. These two items address a request by Marathon Power for authorization to operate as a supplier of natural gas and electricity. Marathon's management team has significant experience in the energy industry. We did review a recent investigation by the New York Commission to address abuses by Marathon in its marketing of energy products. In a March 2017 decision, the New York Commission noted that Atlantis, which was the contractor that Marathon used for marketing Marathon's energy products in New York, combined this marketing with the marketing of high-efficiency LED light bulbs. The Commission determined that, quote, Atlantis solicited customers on behalf of Marathon through a sales pitch for free LED light bulbs, ultimately deceiving the customer into signing an unapproved contract to lease LED bulbs from Atlantis. In response to the show cause order issued by the Commission, Marathon agreed to stop using Atlantis for marketing, and they agreed to take actions to improve their marketing practices. The New York Commission said that, quote, while Marathon's actions and submissions since the issuance of the show cause order provide staff with reason to believe Marathon may be a responsible participant in the retail access market, the Commission would continue to monitor the actions by Marathon to ensure compliance. And indeed, we contacted the New York Commission, and they said they are monitoring the company, and they have no reasons for additional concerns, no indications of any recent abuses. The Commission is concerned, of course, though, anytime there is an enforcement case against an entity coming in for authorization to operate as a supplier. However, based on what we've heard from the New York Commission and from the other factors, it appears that Marathon has been complying with the standards for proper marketing in the jurisdictions in which it's operating. For example, only 8 complaints were filed against Marathon in New York, and only 2 of those complaints addressed deceptive marketing practices. No complaints were filed against Marathon in Pennsylvania or New Jersey. The Better Business Bureau shows 1 complaint and gives them an A+, which is the highest rating. Therefore, based on all of these factors, staff feels comfortable with Marathon's performance and feels comfortable in recommending that the Commission authorize Marathon to operate as a supplier in the state for electricity and gas. I would note the CF Chief Financial Officer and partner, Jeff Greiger, with Marathon, has come to the Commission today and is standing at the other microphone.
All right, thank you. First questions for staff. All right, hearing none, we have the company with us. Good morning.
Morning. Good morning.
Anything you would like to add to our proceedings?
No, I think they covered everything.
All right, very good. Any questions for the company? Yes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, just so that I understand, Atlantis is no longer working with, Marathon is no longer working with Atlantis for marketing purposes.
That's correct. We terminated our relationship with them when the OTSC was filed against us.
Okay, so in Maryland, is your intention to use an outside marketing firm here as well?
We work with over 100 brokers, and our expansion into Maryland is driven by the request of our brokers because they have commercial and industrial clients here. So we don't intend to work with Atlantis here, but we have well over 100 brokers that we will work with.
Okay. I noticed in your application that you were going to participate in a couple of or 3 of our service territories, but not statewide.
Correct.
So is it your intention then is just to focus in those areas and not to expand?
That's correct,
future
yeah. That's driven by our broker network. They did not have any customers or significant business in the other markets.
Okay. All right. Well, then I encourage you to make sure that in the event your business approach changes in the future, that you stay in touch with our Commission staff so that you can make sure that the Commission is aware of any changes to how you practice, especially in other service territories.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Any additional questions? If not, do we have a motion for items 2 and 3?
Mr. Chairman, I'll be moving items 2 and 3 together. I move the Commission for items 2 and 3 grant the company a license to operate as an electricity supplier and as a natural gas supplier in Maryland for the customer classes and service territories applied for and recommended by staff. Direct the company to provide marketing and training materials specific to its Maryland operations to the Commission staff and the Office of People's Counsel 30 days prior to utilization of the materials in Maryland. And lastly, direct the company to file notice with the Commission within 30 days of any changes to the information in the application.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item number 4 is Notre Dame of Maryland University, filed on March 16, 2018, request for a waiver of the penalty provision found in Baltimore Gas and Electric Company's gas tariff, Section 3.4 of Schedule ISS, for 2 of its facilities.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Peter Wilson on behalf of staff. Notre Dame of Maryland University takes gas service under BGE's Schedule ISS, that's small interruptibles, which requires the customer to reduce its gas consumption to 0 or operate within contracted optional firm delivery service amounts upon notice of an interruption. The university received notice of an interruption on January 5, 2018, and did successfully switch from natural gas to the use of its alternative fuel, which is fuel oil. Because of numerous failures on the part of its third-party fuel delivery service, however, the university ran out of fuel oil on the third day of the interruption and returned to the use of natural gas for heating university buildings, using approximately 2,139 therms during the remainder of the interruption period. Based on its good faith efforts to interrupt as provided in the tariff, the university now requests the Commission to grant a waiver of the penalty for its failure to interrupt. Staff has reviewed the tariff and the university's actions before, during, and after the interruption and concludes that the university has met the four-part test demonstrating good faith efforts to comply with the order to interrupt as set forth in detail in staff's comments. Specifically, the university complied with required biannual testing of its system, was prepared to interrupt, and did interrupt upon notice. The university also implemented an energy reduction program at that time, and it continued it during the interruption. The university ordered delivery of sufficient fuel oil on each of the 2 days before the interruption and continued its efforts to receive fuel oil throughout the period of the interruption from its regular supplier and alternative suppliers. Because its supplier misdelivered the fuel intended for the university to another school, the university ran out of fuel on the final day of the interruption. The university has stated that in future it will fill its tanks before the heating season and order fuel on a longer lead time before predicted periods of extreme cold to prevent any recurrence. Staff therefore recommends that the Commission grant the waiver of penalties requested by Notre Dame.
Thank you. Questions? Commissioner Linton?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you tell me if scheduled ISS customers are made aware of the length of the interruption at any time? Are they able to estimate how long it will be?
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Jason Cross on behalf of staff. Unfortunately, weather events are very difficult to predict lengthwise. So that generally speaking, there's not much of an estimate that would be accurate to give to customers.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got a few questions. Does staff know how much money, if the penalty is not waived, how much money we're talking about in terms of dollars for this penalty?
That's approximately $147,000, I believe.
$147,000. And what happens to that money? Remind me.
I'm sorry, that money would be returned to firm use customers.
To the firm use customers.
Correct.
Did BG&E weigh in on this waiver request at all? Did we check with them? We have any input from BG? I don't see them here today.
Yes, they did not weigh in on it. Historically, they're neutral on these. They don't usually take a stance on them.
Fair enough. We had a similar case with the university. It was University of Maryland College Park, and I believe WGL, that was very significant, and there was no waiver granted in that instance. How does this case differ from that case?
Well, at the time, there was actually no tariff language in the WGL tariff that would allow for a waiver. And so in the case as that was resolved, it was actually noted that there was no waiver language that would allow it. In the interim, since that case, WGL has included language to enable a waiver request, and you'll see University of Maryland College Park back again.
Okay. Fair enough. I guess one last question. The fourth condition that the university met for the waiver in their responses was to prevent recurrence, or to be fully compliant in the future. And NDMU stated it will ensure that its fuel leak tank is full prior to the heating season and pre-schedule fuel oil deliveries a week in advance of any predicted extreme or extended cold weather periods. Did the school offer why they didn't do that in this instance?
Well, I believe they did not. In phone conversations, the written response was that, and then in phone conversations, they indicated that their tanks were fundamentally full. I mean, they were very close to full. They just wanted to top off. So it wasn't like they were at, a quarter of a tank and running on empty. The interruption in this case was for an extended period of time. They were actually, had they gotten their delivery as opposed to being delivered at the prep school, they would have fully complied with this.
Yeah, I'm surprised they only have about 2 days worth of supply on site of fuel for the alternative, but that's neither here nor there, I suppose. I'm going to support this, but I am going to do so, Mr. Chairman, with some reservation because of the impact on firm use customers and the general population and why we have these tariffs in the first place and the benefits that the customers who are on these tariffs receive. We expect them to interrupt when they're called upon to interrupt. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further questions on this item? Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For item number 4, I move we grant the requested waiver.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries.
The last item on the agenda is Potomac Electric Power Company, filed on March 30th, 2018, revised tariff pages. The company proposes changes to the general terms and conditions for furnishing electric service in Maryland, effective May 1, 2018.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Lloyd Spivak for the Commission staff. This is a filing by the Potomac Electric Power Company revising its general terms and conditions for furnishing electric service, specifically its service connection fees. On April 25, 2018, the company filed errata to the original tariff filing of March 30th, having discovered an error in a component of the company's calculation of the service connection fees. The revised tariff, including the errata, would change the current charge of $1,764 to $1,812 for single-family detached dwellings, and would change the current charge of $970 to $1,044 per unit for townhouses and multi-family dwellings. The Commission has determined previously that the use of 3 prior years' average estimated costs of residential service connection fees constitute a reasonable basis by which to determine annual increases to these fees. The proposed changes were calculated using this methodology. Staff also conducted considerable discovery to verify the accuracy and reasonableness of the revised calculation. The current proposal for residential service connection fees for 2018 through 2019 utilizes cost estimates from 2015 through 2017. The residential line service extension charge is broken into 2 categories, as noted before: single-family detached dwellings and townhouses multifamily dwellings. The changes from the existing to the proposed line extension service charges are presented in staff's comments, along with a cost breakdown and an explanation of what is driving those changes. Overall, staff believes the changes are properly calculated and based on documented increases in PEPCO's costs. PEPCO is generally very cooperative in the discovery process, but was unable to provide documentation to prove that the variation between actual costs and estimated costs was not significant. Staff therefore is requesting that the company work with staff to develop a process to provide the necessary information to evaluate whether actual costs and estimates have an appropriate variation and the supporting documentation, and the company has agreed to do so. Staff recommends that the Commission accept the revised tariff pages for filing and direct the company to file clean tariff pages with an effective date of June 6, 2018. Staff further recommends that the Commission direct PEPCO to work with staff to develop metrics that both support and evaluate the variation between actual costs and estimated costs.
Well, thank you, Mr. Spivak. Any questions for staff? Commissioner Richard.
I just have one. I'm interested to know, do we have any comparison data for other utilities that their connection fees?
I think we're generally aware of what those connection fees are, and we certainly can look them up in the tariffs if we need to, and for that matter, if and when the issue comes up, we can go to the other companies and obtain that information.
In your analysis, are these generally in line with what the costs are in surrounding states?
I'll let Mr. Baker speak to that one, Commissioner.
Hello, Commissioner Benjamin Baker on behalf of staff. I looked at other utilities tariffs, some of them, and everyone has a slightly different method of how they develop the connection service fees. Delmarva will evaluate if it's going to be above and beyond what the what traditional service would cost before they would actually assess a fee to the customer. BG actually has a charge to the customer a base fee, and then past a certain point they start to charge for additional footage. And so it varies by utility what they're doing. I believe Delmarva, they have a small charge, but also they request the customer to do their own trenching. And so everyone has their own, I guess, approach to how the connection fees are assessed to the customer. I would also note that most of the other utilities have not been in a while for a update to their tariff on connection fees, while Pepco comes in every year for an update to theirs based off of the formula that has been established through two prior cases.
Okay, thank you. That was very informative. And so overall, you found that this was a reasonable amount, and their methodology is okay.
Right. I have no, based off of the 2001 order, I have no reason to think that they've changed their methodology and approach that's been approved by the commission to assess the fee. What we were having trouble determining was they use estimated costs, not actual costs, which has been approved. The question is, what is that variation? Was what we were trying to follow up on to find out how far off they were. But when we tried to delve into the information, the company wasn't able to produce that information for various reasons, and so we were like, okay, well, how about we work with you so that next year when this comes forward, we have that information.
Great. Well, thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you. Mr. Baker, I wanted to ask you about the tax implications in your write-up, and you thankfully point out that there was an over-collection of taxes due to the Tax Cut and Jobs Act and these service connections, and it was about $2 for a single-family dwelling and $3.63 for a unit. $4 for a single-family dwelling and $2 for townhouses and multifamily dwellings. I'm interested in what threshold staff would utilize to recommend that we not return these over-collection taxes, albeit small, to the taxpayers or to the ratepayers that they were over-collected from.
So the first, these charges are typically, well, I can turn to the company for this, but our understanding, these charges are typically charged to contractors, not to residential, or not typically charged to the customers who are taking service, though they could charge it, or that could be bundled into what they pay for the house. The other portion is, yes, these were small charges, and so staff didn't follow up with Pepco to see about the return. Of course, we could argue that since the commission said any and all are based off of previous commission orders, that they're saying we want all the money to go back to customers, that could be used as the threshold to say that we would like to see that returned. And then we could get into it with the company in terms of determining what the cost is to return that money to the customers.
Yeah, I may follow up with the company to ask them that to see what it would be. It seemed that it could be as simple as a one-time bill credit. And I'm interested in the implications going forward. What is that threshold? Where do we have some latitude, and where do we set the line? We're okay with that. I will probably also follow up with the company and ask them if a customer didn't pay their bill by $2 or $4 or $6 on a monthly bill payment, they kind of overlook that too. I kind of doubt it in my experience, so I don't think it goes both ways. And I'm just trying to calibrate where we should set that line as a commission in terms of what we overlook. As you properly indicated, our previous order said all tax savings shall be returned to the ratepayers. So I'm just trying to figure out how much latitude we're going to set in there as a float zone.
Yes, I just wanted to reiterate. I mean, one of the things is that you did say that all of the tax savings get returned to the ratepayers, and again, as Mr. Baker noted, that the one of the things that we were considering was that these fees are not actually paid by ratepayers. They're paid, as Mr. Baker said, typically by contractors, by the people building the houses, and that's not usually the same as the customer of the utility.
I can guarantee you that the person buying the house is going to pay these fees.
They're almost certainly passed through in that.
Of the house or serving it with water or gas or electricity, they're going to pay. Nobody's doing it for them for free.
They're almost certainly
I
passed.
find that a specious argument. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, they are almost certainly passed through in the price of whatever that is charged ultimately to the customer.
Okay. I'll ask the company when they're up. I'm just having a hard time, Mr. Chairman, trying to digest why these over-collection taxes shouldn't be returned.
Okay. Let's go, companies right here. So any follow-up or additional questions for staff? If not, all right, Mr. Seegers. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I do not have anything to add to staff's buck sheet, but I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How hard would it be, Mr. Seegers, for the company to return these taxes? Just credit it on the bill. It seems like a very simple accounting thing to do, and return the monies that were over-collected per our previous orders.
In terms of returning, I mean, yes. I mean, I think there are a variety of ways that you can do it, but it can be as simple as a bill credit. In terms of identifying what the process is of identifying which specific customers get that bill credit, I mean, unfortunately, I can't speak to how involved that process is. But yes, the actual mechanism is relatively simple. It can be a bill credit.
Yeah, I'm sure it's easy. It was easy enough to identify so we could figure out what the numbers were of over-collection. So you have to know who they are, where they are, because you had to get the aggregates, put them together.
I would imagine so, yes, Commissioner.
Would the company be averse to returning this in terms of a bill credit? Since you over-collected them?
If it's an over-collection, I don't believe that we would be adverse. Unfortunately, I wasn't. I can't imagine why we would be adverse to it if it is an over-collection.
I mean, I know it seems like a small matter, but it's the principle more than the dollar amount that's important to me. Where do we set that threshold? What do we overlook and what don't we? And I think if we set a zero tolerance, return all over-collections, then it's easy. So
Understood.
Okay. I won't ask you if the company would overlook someone underpaying their bill by $2 or $4 or $6. All right.
Any other questions for the company? All right, so the item is before us. So Commissioner O'Donnell, let me begin with you to see how you would propose we proceed. Clearly, if we need additional information, if you would like some additional information from the company, then I think we would need to defer this item and ask for them to come back to us.
We could do it, I guess, one of two ways, either amend our proposed motion to direct it, or we could take it under advisement to get the appropriate information from the company and make sure that we know the impact on the company for ordering this.
Yeah, I mean, I think we probably would have to defer it so it would come back to us in an administrative meeting rather than taking it under advisement, if we want to go that route. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think because we don't have enough information, for me, I feel like I don't have enough information to order it at this time because I don't know how much it would cost the company, because if it's going to cost the company twice as much to do the refund as it is as the refund, let's say it costs $4 to return $2, I think we have to think about that and look at that. So for me, I think there's not enough information to make such an order.
I would agree with that, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so why don't we do this and we'll defer item number...
And I'll support also the deferment. No, I think that Commissioner O'Donnell makes a very good point. I mean, so often, we hear that it's de minimis charge, but it's only when it's going back to the ratepayer. I mean, we never hear de minimis if it's something that's owed the utility. So I strongly agree with what Commissioner O'Donnell's doing, and I think you're correct. We should take this under advisement and get more information.
All right, well, what we'll do is we'll defer it. So... Mr. Seegers, if you could get back to the commission with some follow-up on PEPCO's position on returning these over-collections through a bill credit, as well as the cost of that, of returning the over-collection.
Absolutely.
And what time requirement you would need for that, get that to staff. And when we have that, we'll put this back on the agenda for the following administrative meeting once we get that. Okay, with that, I want to thank Mr. Baker for his analysis. We'll see you again when this item comes back up. That's our last item for the morning. Thanks, everyone. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Commissioners.